Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of One Vision. This is Theo, your host for today's episode. And joining us in the studio today is Pam Villanova as VP of Digital Banking at American Eagle Financial Credit Union. Thank you for joining us, Pam.
Thank you for having me, Theo. It's really nice to see you again.
Yes, and it is indeed. And I must thank our mutual friend, Jim Perry, as well as Alchemy for bringing us together, because if it wasn't because of Nashville, I don't think I'll be able to meet you face to face and actually had a quick chat before we dash off for dinner. So thank you.
No, it was such a pleasure, and it was such a great conference, and we got to meet a lot of really great people.
It was indeed. I think it was the second time I was ever in Nashville. It's been a while, but it was a very interesting place with a lot of interesting people. I did not miss getting lost all the time though. That was that was a maze of a hotel, but otherwise everything was really cool. So let's get to what you are doing, what you've been doing.
Sure.
Your credit union had made quite a splash. You hit a major milestone, I heard, a digital banking conversion. That should be like the headline news. Credit union, digital banking conversion. Tell us a little bit more.
Sure. So we were really excited when we were able to make this change for the credit union. As you know, and as many of your listeners probably know, it's a very challenging project to enter into. We've been looking at doing this really over multiple years. Started probably about 4 years ago when we made a decision that digital as a channel needed to be a much more strategic focus for the credit union. I mean, we had always had platforms and always had that capacity, but it really wasn't as strategic as we had done or wanted to do. So minor shift internally with some leadership, and I started to form a department for our digital services area. And we started to really take a deep dive on who are we, what do we do, what do we offer now, how does it compare with what's in the market, and where are the areas where we have gaps, where we can start really focusing on bringing our, whether it's systems, processes, whatever it may be, up to speed. We engaged with a Cornerstone Advisors, actually, to do a digital assessment for us back in 2022 was when we finished all of that work. And I think what they did for us was, beyond helping us put everything in one place, they also really affirmed what we thought was going on with where we were in the market and what we needed to do. So it was really helpful to have that outside in look for our teams. And then that became our roadmap, frankly, to how we were going to approach things on a go forward basis. The Alchemy digital conversion, we had our RFP last year. We did a bunch of demos with a lot of the really great solutions that are available in the market. And we really kicked the tires on what we needed to do. We started by thinking through what were our strategic initiatives, right? So what was the weakness in our current system, or what did we think we needed to do to be positioning ourselves at a better place? So there were three key areas that we focused on. That one was user experience. The front end needed to be really easy for members to use, bring everything that they were missing from the current platform. We focused on data. It's all what we talk about these days, it feels like sometimes. But not only do we need data, but we need ways to use the data. We need analysis. We need communication channels. We need access to be able to do that and turn that data into something meaningful versus just a whole bunch of information that we don't have any way to use. And then the last big key thing was we wanted a partner who was also willing to partner with others. So fintechs, other companies, anything that might come up that we felt was an important add to our programs or our products and services, and not someone who would put roadblocks in front of our ability to integrate, whether that's through their own SDK or through some kind of custom work. So that's what we think we found in Alchemy. The project took a long time, as these things tend to do, and they're very complex. But I think the real win for us is not even so much that the technology worked. It's really more that we pulled together a really wide group of people within the credit union to focus on this effort and help us, who then in turn became our champions out in the world when people had questions or when there were concerns or when we got to the conversion and we had any kind of issues that came up. Everybody was pulling in the same direction and really felt a sense of ownership and really felt that it was the right thing to do. And that was really very, very gratifying to watch as a leader at the organization, to see people come together in a way that I'm not sure that we have had in the past, and really particularly proud of that work and the folks that helped get us and lift us up to where we are today.
Wow. I am listening to you, and I remember you did post that on the social post, that you stressed the partnership with the colleagues and how everyone come together to make it happen. That's one of those elements that we don't think enough about. We often go out and look for what's the technology, how can we fit technology into what we do, without people is always like the second thought, right? It's like, oh, well, okay, this is what we need and let's go. Oh,
Yeah.
oops, things are breaking. We need someone else to help come. Culture, people, those are all things that matter. I mean, you and I sitting here through a screen, but we're people. I'm not talking to a bot, and you're not interviewed by a digital avatar of me. I'm real. Aside from that, what are some of the lessons learned from that whole initiative? You did say it took 4 years from very beginning of planning and learning to now.
I would say one of the things I think we learned is that we really do, and I don't mean just we as an American Eagle, but I think we as an industry, we need to change how we collaborate with others. Um, there were a lot of partners involved in this process. We had a consultant come in, we had the partners with the vendors, right? So we didn't just change our digital banking, we also upgraded our digital account opening platform and a couple of other things along the way. And all of that means partnerships that we need to work with, right? Worked very closely with other partners that were already a part of the process that also needed to convert bill pay, for example, a very big part of what we offer for our members. And that was its own conversion, essentially. And many of the other third parties were. So I think if I look back, the biggest lesson I learned, and I felt like I knew this, but it's really great to see it actually play out that way, is that we really needed to include all of these people in the process, but also because it's such a large project and it is not a centralized, it's a decentralized process. You're never going to get everything done. Um, Giving team members internally that might not normally have a leadership role an opportunity to learn and develop and show off their leadership skills within a project like this is almost a safe environment of a lab, if you will, that where they have that opportunity to learn and grow and develop. And we talked about it many times, the shift we saw in so many of the partners that we had in this project, the leadership qualities, the skills, the trust that we built, those are the things that you bank on later on down the road, right? So, because when everything's done and everybody goes home and they all say, okay, well, great, we did our thing and now we can walk away, you still have to keep the lights on. You still have to do work. We've got a roadmap we need to work on. So getting all of these people engaged and building those relationships and partnerships, I really think that's the key to success in any major shift, regardless of what the widget is that you're making a change to.
Almost feels like it's a necessary ingredient.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how, so thinking through that and taking that threat further, right? So you talked about people, you talk about learning and growing, you talk about leadership. Regardless of if it's a digital banking conversion or you doing an AI project, which I don't think we can actually get by 5 minutes without saying AI. I'm just getting it out of the way.
It is your thing, right? AI.
It is the thing. I think the latest thing is agent commerce. Everyone is talking about having an agent do shopping for you. Although I think part of shopping is going through the process myself. I don't think I want a bot to do it for me. But regardless, see, I'm going off rails again. But let's take that thread further, because when we think about credit union, we think about communities, we think about people focused relationships, internally as well as externally. It's always a huge part of the credit union fabric. So how do you go about balancing, for example, the needs and wants of a diverse population of members, right, that you want to attract versus the ones that you're already serving, or the employees who have been in the credit union for a while versus attracting new talent who comes in who might have a different attitude or think about, going to accomplishing something else, because it's almost like an opposite end of the dynamic. So how do we do a balance between that two?
I think it's a great question, and we grapple with this a lot. We have our mission, vision, and values we've recently updated. So our mission, I'll just share it: enriching the lives of our members and communities to create a world where financial freedom is a reality. That's a key to how we are making our decisions about what we're going to do, because that's our North Star, right? So when I think about your question about how do we engage with this wide variety of legacy members who have been with us since the SEG days, higher net worth, generally older generation, but we also want to think about their children and their grandchildren, and further down the road. And I think our approach to this is that we're trying to reach the individual. So in my opinion, regardless of where you are on the socioeconomic scale, regardless of what your address is, regardless of your age or wherever your station in life is, you have financial needs. It might be, I need to save for a house. I might need new tires on my car. I might have just lost my job. I may be expecting a baby. I may be planning my retirement. I may have aging parents. We all have these things happen. They're not unique to any one group, any level, socioeconomically, any kind of individual is going to have something like this going on, a death in the family. And our approach to this is, so how do we take, as Jane Doe walks in the branch and she has whatever those needs are, how are we going to create that connection so that whatever her needs are, we start to identify them? We can say, we can help you with this. We can give you a referral to that. We have a product or a service maybe that's going to help you. We want to focus on what are her needs right now in the moment. And then that's how we build that relationship and build that trust. We don't offer anything wildly different as a product or a service than any other financial institution out there. Hopefully someday we will, but right now it's a commodity. But I think it's all, again, back to people. It's all in how you approach that conversation. What are your needs right now? What can we do to help you with that? How can we guide you? And then build that trust, whether it's someone in the community, one of our own team members, a current member, a new member. We need to think about what that person needs and wants versus trying to create some kind of cookie cutter solution, right, for all of that group, all of those groups.
How each individual person needs and wants, it's like you say, it's down to people, and we are not just a number. That's what I keep thinking as you're talking. We're not a bit and bite. We are all different, but yet we all need the same thing. We want food on the table. We want our children to be able to go to school of their choice. We want our grandkids safe. We want our parents, have a stable retirement years. So a lot of things we are very similar. I think we're more similar than sometimes we are led to believe. And
Yes,
right,
absolutely.
so focusing on what brings us together. I balancing that needs. I think it's an art. It almost feels like an art. I know you say it's about people, but it feels like an art, and you guys are doing an amazing job. What if we think back at that and we look at all of the financial institutions that's out there or credit unions who are in a similar journey as you are, what what would be your advice to them as they are tackling with similar challenges um, that they're in? With the changing demographics, with changing appetites, changing needs of their members. What would you tell them is the most important thing they need to focus on?
I mean, I think it's going to be different for everyone. I think, there are some credit unions I've seen that have really put a stake in the ground as far as who's their market, right? Some really amazing work going on out there. There's a lot of digital banks that are happening that are very, very targeted on what their market is. And they've done a really good job of thinking through, if my market is doctors and I have a digital banking platform, what is it that a doctor needs and what's the important pieces to them? And I don't want to make that sound easy because it's not. It's very hard to build those things out. And it's very hard for a lot of organizations to really be very targeted about who their customer, member, client is going to be. And it doesn't always go over well, right, with people who don't fit whatever the target area is or the target market is. We're not really targeting a group or a type of individual in our case, and I know there's others that are doing work similar to this. What we're targeting is how do we create an experience that resonates with our members in our community and helps them understand that we're an important part of their financial lives and we want to help them. So I don't know if this is advice as much as it's just a thought. I think you need to really talk to people and listen to them. And I know, as I say this, I think it's kind of it's an interesting thing to have someone who runs a digital banking program be like, you got to talk to people, you got to do people things.
I agree though. We do need to talk to people. This reminds me of an ethnographic study I did almost a decade ago now with the team, and that was the first and the last time I was in Nashville before I met you. And we did a huge study with over 100 people. And the goal of that study, and we went in with an assumption. Our assumption was people need tech tools to keep them safe at home. Let's find out what those tech tools are. So it was a bias. It was an inherent bias of us, just a bunch of nerds who probably didn't know better. The outcome of that ethnographic study, after spending a whole week talking to a lot of people who were 60s, 70s, and 80s, it turns out that they said, we don't need tech tools in the house. We want people. We want our children who come by. We want someone at home with us. We don't want to be home with the robots. I don't want to have a camera at home watching me.
Yeah.
And that was such an experience that stuck with me because precisely of what you say, we need to talk to people. We just assumed and we go off and build things. As it turns out, it wasn't even what people want. Mm-hmm. And then we wonder why they were not adapting the tool. So what you said, I don't think it's just a thought. I think it's an important leadership mantra that people need to think about and have it ingrained in everything that they do. Yeah. With that being said, we are almost approaching the end of 2025. I cannot believe that. I see Christmas trees popping up. I see fall leaves outside. Mm-hmm. Has anything caught you by surprise this year in terms of what's been happening with financial services?
There are a couple things probably. I would say And maybe this isn't a surprise. Again, maybe it's more a comment, but the velocity of change has just, wow. When we think a year ago, I'm not even going to go back to like December, but let's talk about a year ago. We were talking about AI, but it wasn't as nearly as prevalent as it is today. And now it's becoming, now it's becoming required conversation. Now we're working, a lot of our partners, a lot of our other colleagues in the space are putting a stake in the ground there. They're moving forward. Agentic AI. I mean, all of this is, and you know better than I do because this is what you do, but it's just been, it went from being something that we're curious about and we're talking about a little bit, and now it's table stakes. Like suddenly it's table stakes in 1 year. I think stablecoin, right? Um, Blockchain's been around well for a while, right? It's nothing new, but suddenly it's becoming everything people are talking about. And we're hearing about it in the boardroom, we're hearing about it in the leadership groups, we're hearing about it at conferences. We just had some folks at Forum last week, and it's just a huge part of the conversation about what are you going to do about this and what are you going to do about AI. And I mean, I think we're always going to have things like that happen, right? There's just always going to be new technology, new ways to do things. And sometimes it's been around a long time and just starts to hit its stride because suddenly everything else around it is ready now for, how we're going to use those things. So those are probably really the two bigger ones, and under the header of how quickly things are changing in our space now. But I would add, and I'm going to go back to people again, when I see resilience in the way that we have seen, in our industry, when we see the creativity of what people have been able to do, even within, right, some of the changes that we faced and, post COVID and all of the other things that we've all been through in the last few years, I continue to be excited and encouraged by what I'm seeing from that perspective. So even though some of the technology and some of the widgets are starting to really take hold, I really love that I'm seeing that level of resilience and creativity in our industry that I think is, particularly for credit unions, I think a key to our survival.
Resilience. I did remember the COVID days when remember the oh my god, what was that thing? You have the pneumatic tube and
Mm-hmm.
then you sent down the check.
Yep.
It came back. It made a
Okay.
comeback. I remember taking the kids through the drive-through, and they were like, "What is this
What is
thing?"
that? Do
Right?
they want to put their hand under it to feel the suction
Yeah, and
power?
then you can hear it. It was like a vacuum cleaner. Next thing you know, whoop, and something came back up. It was like magic. I remember they were younger, and I was just looking at that thing. Unbelievable. And look at where we are right now in 2025, almost end of. What do you think will be the biggest challenge that we'll face though? And not just credit union obviously, because that's what we're here to talk about, but I think overall from an industry perspective, because a couple of things that's been on my mind looking at consumer financial well-being, for example, right? Especially given the last half year or so where more consumers are more stressed. We've seen it in the JD Powers survey. This has more consumers are worried about, being able to make ends meet. Their wages are not going up as fast as all the other cost of living. How do we, and then from the work front, right? How do we keep up with all the tech changes? We're seeing waves of new graduates that are unable to find work. We're seeing established white collar workers who've been exited, quote unquote, based on what Accenture is saying. You can't fit into our AI future. Thank you for your service. Goodbye.
Yeah.
So with all of these things that's happening, it feels like it's a tidal wave of change. Where do you think the biggest challenge and opportunity will be for our industry to help meet customers where they are and to help meet members where they need us to be?
So I think one of the bigger challenges is going to be keeping pace with customer expectations. I mean, we talk about this now. It's not a new thing, but I think the pace of that is going to increase. when you think about, all of the digital experiences that we all have on a daily basis. I mean, you and I talked earlier about social media, merchants, shopping, getting things delivered to my home someday by drone, probably. It's all very much in the mind of the consumer. They're not parsing out, well, that's a retail experience, and that's a this experience, and that's my financial experience. For the consumer, it's all blended together. And so what we're facing is that there's an expectation now that what we can provide, whether it's messaging and communication or tools or what have you, is going to mimic or at least align with what they're experiencing in other parts of their digital lives. And I think that's a real challenge for financial institutions, primarily because a lot of us are very risk averse organizations. Innovation's not a big thing in that space. I think there's places that do that really, really well, but many of us are not, in that forefront of being proactive in this space. Although I think we need to get more that way. Um, and so that's for me. That's my biggest concern with regard to what I do here and what we do as not just as an organization, but as an industry. I think there's also an element of, and I want to go back to your comment about retaining talent. Talent's it's a big problem, and it's a problem in that people are having a hard time finding work who thought that what they went to school for was what they were going to be doing, and you have to be flexible. But I think there's an opportunity for us to partner closer with our own team members, especially younger generations. I think we need to really understand them better. I mean, there's all kinds of work out there, white papers on, Gen Z and Gen Alpha and what their expectations are. And of course, as they get older, those things will start to become really apparent to us. But one of the things that I've been picking up on a lot is that there actually is a need for the human connection for these groups. They love their tools. They'll use digital tools all day long. They don't want to get on the phone with you if they can potentially avoid that. But if they have a need, if they need advice, if they need support, if they have a question, they want to know that they can go and, talk to somebody and feel confident that they're getting the right answer or the correct answer. Maybe that's the better way to say it. Even despite the fact, like we joke about all the time, TikTok is where a lot of those kids get their financial information from. Well, there's actually some really good stuff on TikTok if you've spent some time on there. It's not all 100% great, but we need to think about, how are we going to communicate? How are we going to change how we do things to meet them where they are? So maybe that's more an opportunity than a challenge. They blend together in my mind quite a bit.
They do. I feel like I need that from a parenting perspective too, right? Because my kids are Gen Z, solidly Gen Z, and Gen Alpha. Well, the Gen Alpha thinks she's Gen Z, but it's.
I like to think I'm a little Gen Z here and there.
I have no idea why I am. They keep calling me a boomer. I'm like,
no,
I'm
you're
technically a Gen X, but fine. They always boomer me, but it is fascinating to see, to your point, how the younger generation are perceiving technology. At the same time, they also crave the human connection. I see it in how they interact with their friends. It's absolutely funny. They would have their play dates with computers next to each other. So they will be engaged in the digital world together while they are together in the physical world. It's the weirdest thing. For me, I'm like, I'm used to just being outside, unplugged. But then again, I also grew up in a time where I didn't have computers until I was in high school, right? So the culture is very different. And I think how we perceive the usefulness of tool and what they do is also different. So it is a learning experience, but I hope that it gives us a new opportunity to perhaps reinvent what we do and do something different and more exciting, because gosh, we need change.
We do. We need to be like let's see, who's Lady Gaga, always changing,
Ooh.
you know, the way she looks and the way she performs, or Madonna, that's the other one I always think of. And I'm like, you know, when you need an example for how to shift with the times, you know, there's a lot out there, not just singers, you know, but those are the ones that come to mind quickly. But you know, we really do need to um, be flexible in that way. You know, recognize what's going on. Don't hide our heads in the sand, because that's not going to help anyone. But be flexible, understand the pulse of what's going on in our industry and in our communities, and react to it positively, right? It's not bad, it's just different. And, you know, the better we get at accepting those things, the better we're going to be, and more survival skills that we're going to have as those things start to change even further.
This is what I wrote. It's not bad, it's just different. I think that is the perfect takeaway from our
Yeah.
conversation. So thank you so much, Pam, for joining us on the show. I learned a lot, and I can't wait to see you again in person, hopefully in a few months.
Hopefully.
And hopefully, and for the rest of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of One Vision. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for having me, Theo.
Thank you, Pam.